So thank you very much for a very intriguing, very multi-layered, but also of course a very provocative talk. And I'm sure there are questions in the audience, and Professor Confino kindly agreed to, of course, answer and engage with us in discussion. So we have a mic right here. The acoustics are so-so in this room, so I want to make sure that everyone can be heard. So just raise your hand, maybe introduce yourself briefly, who you are, ask your question, make your comment, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, so who would like to get first?
Hi, would you care to comment on the recent brouhaha about Prime Minister Netanyahu's comments about the Grand Mufti, whether you think they're accurate and why they've caused so much consternation in Israel itself?
Thank you for the question. While I was riding and looking at the beautiful leaves, I thought someone is going to ask this. It ruined part of my trip because I thought of an answer. So, Prime Minister Netanyahu gave yesterday a speech to the World Zionist Organization, I think in Jerusalem, and he said that the Mufti, the leader of the Palestinians, who visited Hitler in Berlin in November 1941, actually suggested to Hitler the idea of the final solution. Prime Minister Netanyahu said that when they met, Hitler had in mind to expel the Jews and expel them also to Palestine. So the Mufti told him, well, and then you are all going to expel them to Palestine. We don't want them. So Hitler asked him, okay, what should I do with them? And the Mufti said, burn them. And this created big controversy in Israel, but now also in America and around the world. So, as a historian, I look at it from two perspectives. First is the issue of the facts. Some things happened in history and some things did not happen. And one should be really clear about this. Such a conversation never happened, and Hitler, with all due respect to the Mufti, Haj Amin al-Husseini, Hitler didn't need the Mufti in order to want to exterminate the Jews. That's basically it. The final solution, or the extermination of the Jews, was something that Hitler thought long before. The Mufti, by November 1941, there were already between 1 million to 1.5 million Jews exterminated by the Nazis in Poland, and following the Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union on June 22nd, 1941, SS units, Einsatzkommando, followed the German army, the German Wehrmacht, and their task was to kill Jews. This was their only task. So there is no basis whatsoever. I don't know of any historian, no Thomas, I don't know of any historian who would subscribe to this interpretation. Absolutely. This is my first task as a historian. But I'm also a historian of memory. I'm also interested not in what happened in the past, but in how people perceive and understand what happens in the past. So I'm very interested in what Netanyahu said. I'm not among those historians who will say, oh, he flunked his exam, he doesn't know history, next. No, on the contrary, his view is really interesting to tell me something about his state of mind. Now, I leave to every one of you to interpret it, but I can give you my interpretation. My interpretation is that basically Netanyahu said that the Palestinians are Nazis. This is not an innocent interpretation in the current conflict in the Holy Land. To think that the Palestinians taught Hitler anti-Semitism is quite a radical view. So today Netanyahu explained himself. And he said, no, what I wanted to say is that the Palestinians wanted to exterminate the Jews even without the occupation and the settlements and all this. So this is a completely, in terms of history, it's ahistorical. What does one has to do with the other? But again, in terms of memory, it is very interesting. Basically, for him, there is one long line of history. Palestinians always want to be against the Jews are always victims. And there are another two things that are interesting. Germans and Jews have a conflicted history. But the Holocaust is over. The Holocaust belongs to the past. Of course, for the survivors, for those who experienced it, it's always part of their life. But as a historical event, it belongs to the past in the sense that the context of the life of the Jews following the creation of the State of Israel and of Israeli army is completely different now from what it was between 1939 and 1945. Historical context of the Holocaust does not exist anymore. It is a past event. Germans and Jews have no claims from each other. They don't have conflict over territory. They have the conflict of memory. And that is why it is possible to reconcile or to come to a rapprochement between in the issue of the memory of the Holocaust between German and Jews. Because actually there are no political or other claims, one group from the other. It's much more difficult to reconcile or to come to a rapprochement between Palestinian history and Jewish history. The reason is that this is a live political issue. There are claims that belong now. It is not history. It doesn't belong to the past. It's the present. So I would read the Prime Minister's vision of history. I would look at it within the eye of the present. What does he want to tell me about the present? I think it's disturbing that the Prime Minister says it. Another, just one last point, an Israeli commentator said today that to say that Hitler did not think of exterminating the Jews in 1941, that's a sort of Holocaust denial. And in Germany and in France and Italy, there is a law. If you deny the Holocaust, you go to jail. I think it doesn't speak well of the Prime Minister of Israel that he denies the Holocaust in this way. Khan Jamil al-Husseini, whatever he did or did not do, it's not the same as Hitler. Just leave it. So it was instrumentalized for political reasons. And I think to instrumentalize the Holocaust, obviously it's not something that I can support.
Okay, let's take another question. Of course, I also would like to especially encourage the students in the room to speak out loud and proud, analytically, and of course make your teachers proud too, for the great questions you're asking. So, can I have another show of hands? Who would like to ask a question?
I'm Hannah Malcolm. I'm a history student here, and I haven't had a chance to really finish your book yet, but I noticed that you disagreed with Alent's concept of the banality of evil, and I was wondering if that was because the banality of evil says that the Germans weren't thinking when they became Nazis, and that doesn't allow us to understand why something like the burning of the Hebrew Bible occurred.
Yes, right. The banality of evil was a concept by Hannah Arendt. Now, there are a lot of... So, I don't believe in the banality of evil because I think that it flattens one's motivations and one's emotion and one's thinking. about. Now, if Arendt wanted to say, and there are debates about what did she want to say, if she wanted to say the banality of evil in the sense that even simple people can be evil, this I have no doubt. You don't need to be a special person in order to be evil. But if we take it also as an argument that actually there isn't much to explain, so I disagree. I think that even Eichmann, or not even Eichmann too, had in some point had to imagine this extermination of the Jews. It's not that he was born with it. He had to explain it to himself. He had to justify it. Indeed, Eichmann all the time said, I'm not guilty. And I don't think he said it only to the court, he said it also to himself. I don't think that he felt that he was guilty, but he told the court that he was not guilty. So what is the story that you tell yourself that makes you not guilty? That makes you part of a collectivity? That's what I was interested in. It's not enough to say that he was a bureaucrat. Also bureaucrats have to have stories, have to have justifications, have to have emotions.
In the context of your book, why did the Nazis actually save Jewish artifacts and set up museums?
Excellent question. Thank you. So the question was, why did the Nazis, in the context of my book, why did the Nazis save Jewish artifacts, right?
Right.
I would even go further. The Nazis planned a museum for Jewish history in Prague.
Right.
And they shipped from all over Europe precious Judaica, menorahs, to this museum. The more they exterminated the Jews, the more shipments took place for obvious reasons. Not only this, the Nazis were very interested in Jewish books. For example, in Prague, there were a lot of Jews in Prague. When the Jews of Prague were sent to their death, there was a special commando unit, or a unit, that went from apartment of Jews, looked at their libraries, and took all the books the Germans wanted. So they took very seriously Jewish learning, Jewish books. In Amsterdam, special German units received the keys of the Jewish flats. They went and also they picked. And so all over Europe, this is a very important part of my story. Why? It's a very important question. Because the answer is hidden in the story I told you, but of course I couldn't. Because the Nazis took the Jews very seriously. If you want to kill an entire group of people, you do it not because you think that they are nothing. If they are nothing, you don't care about them. You do it because you think that they have awesome power. You want to kill them because you believe that they possess awesome power. The power of morality, the power of the Bible, the power of history. And because you believe that they are powerful, you want to kill them. And when the war would end, the Nazis planned also to tell the story of their victory over the Jews. This is the reason. The Nazis, so my book in many ways commingles apparent oppositions. The Nazis thought the Jews were vermin, but they also thought that they have awesome power. They wanted to exterminate the Jews, but they also wanted to tell their story, that is the Nazi story, of how they overcame the Jews. They wanted to exterminate them from the face of the earth, but they also wanted keep their memory alive in the way that the Nazis would do it. So there is actually a logic to collecting the Judaica and to tell the story of how we overcame the source of historical evil. There is a Nazi logic in it, I want to say.
Hi, I'm Kathy. I'm with the Jewish Federation in Ormond Beach, Florida. And I agree to that. Throughout history, anybody who's overcome anybody else, they've kept the booty kind of thing, and told the story from their perspective of how they overcame each civilization. Is that correct? From your perspective? Well, my question quickly is more on a comment that you made earlier when you first began. I think I've forgotten it now. I can't remember it. I'm so sorry, but I did make that comment. If I remember, I'll raise my hand again.
Okay, let's collect a few more questions and then we wrap up.
You said in your talk, by the way, I'm a freshman at in your talk you said you did not find the Holocaust to be an exceptionalist genocide, and that it was very much like previous genocide and the genocides that came after it, and you don't perceive it to be a exceptionalist sort of thing. And you mentioned something on the lines of it being not exceptionalist because it followed the same patterns of a lot of other ones, but it was seen as exceptionalist just because of how the people that were persecuted, how they were perceived by the outside world. Now, my question to you is that why was this one chosen, or not chosen, but why was this one placed so much emphasis on, why this genocide, as compared to previous genocides like the Armenian genocide, which preceded it by 20 years? What was the key difference or the key factor that allowed this one to gain such popularity or such focus in modern day society?
Well, I didn't say that the Holocaust was just like other genocides. It may have been understood like this. So let me explain it a little bit. What I said is that there are families, there are historical families. There are modern revolutions. The French Revolution was the first. Maybe the American. The French is more... fine, the American. American, French, Russian, Chinese, Cuban, Iranian, these are all modern revolutions. Revolutions that change not only the political system, this is a coup d'etat. Not only the political ruler, this is a coup d'etat, just a putsch, but the political system, the social system, the system of beliefs. Each of these revolutions has particular elements. The French Revolution of 1789 is not like the Iranian Revolution of 1978. They share something as modern revolutions, but each is particular. Now, why am I using the revolution? Because sometimes it helps us to think about the Holocaust with an analogy of another event. The Holocaust also, it belongs to modern genocides. The Armenian, the Holocaust, in Rwanda, and others. Each of these genocides has particularities. Also the Holocaust, obviously, a lot of particularities. Now, when we say that an event is unique, usually what we mean is an identity claim, is not a historical claim. Because all historical events are unique. There is no event that is just like another. That's it. So what do we mean when we say an event is unique? It is an identity claim. For me, it is very special. I am an American. Slavery is very special to me. I am Jewish. The Holocaust is special to me. As an identity claim, it's absolutely legitimate. But as a historical claim, it doesn't tell me much. Because if it is unique, then it can't have lessons. We can't have lessons. Because if it is something, you know, unique to one part of history, what, it has no, it's like it, but events are not, they didn't happen on the moon. They happen here, by human beings. So that's what I meant. So I didn't mean that the Holocaust is not, I didn't mean all genocides are the same. This is obviously, this is the other side of saying it is unique. This is also not true. Each genocide has its own particularities. Now, your question, however, is very important. Why is it that in the West, the Holocaust became so important? In the West, because I don't think that in China, in India, in South America, or in Africa, the Holocaust has the same weight as it is in North America, Europe, Israel, and the English-speaking world, Australia, and everything else. Why? Well, that's what I said. That's what I tried to say. Because I think it's not only about Germany. It's about a certain. It's about because the Jews were the vehicle to create a new civilization, a new Christianity, a European civilization without Jews. The Jews have a special role in Christian European civilization for obvious reasons. And when you have a Christianity or a world without Jews, it's a completely different. We can just imagine how Christianity would have looked like had the Nazis succeeded. How Europe would have looked like. So I think there was something fundamental that was not only about Germany. It was not the German issue with the Jews was not about territory. It was not about the Jews did not have a state, they did not have an army, they did not have competing claims of a territory. I think it was about identity. I think that's why it became so important.
Okay. Maybe I try to ask a flip question to that. What is the intellectual motivation to look at the Jewish issue in separate? Because usually the explanation is that the Holocaust is such a unique experience, so it has to be studied on its own. You sort of look at it from the point of view of the Jews in German imagination, but you confine it to the Jews. I think Thomas Mann said, in places where books are burned, people will be burned.
Yes.
It didn't really mean specifically the Bible.
Right.
And the Nazis were in the habit of burning books, not just the Bible. They burned Freud, they burned many others, and not just Jews, the books by Jews, as they are saying that they treated the art. In fact, what they defined as degenerate art was primarily art by non-Jews. So what is the intellectual benefit of isolating this question? Is that a little bit myopic?
No, it's a very good question. It was not Thomas Mann, it was Heine.
Sorry.
Yeah, but it's fine. Between you and me, Heine and Thomas Mann.
They burned Thomas Mann.
Heine did. And Heine as well. I think that it's very important to look at the genocide of the Jews within the universe of genocides perpetrated by the Nazis. Absolutely. And I learned a lot from comparative genocide studies as well as from interpretations that placed the extermination of the Jews within the other exterminations perpetrated by the Nazis. We cannot understand, actually, the Nazi empire in Europe if we only look at the Holocaust, because they perpetrated other genocides. The Nazis had a very long list of enemies, a very short list of friends. So when we see how they wanted to reshape German and European society overall, we can understand some of the ideas that brought also to the Holocaust. On the one hand. On the other hand, this comparative approach also sharpened for me what was particular in the Holocaust. That this was the only group that the Nazis wanted to exterminate during the war immediately. All the others could wait. We can exterminate some of them or later, we'll see. And the Nazis themselves said, this genocide or this cleansing is important for us in a particular way. So I wanted to ask why. So it was not, I didn't go from the, actually I came to this question precisely because I started by placing the Holocaust within the broader Nazi universe of genocides. Then I saw, well, but it's not enough. It doesn't explain me why the Nazis were obsessed with the Jews. And there's also a chronological issue. The Nazis started the genocide, say, against the Poles and others in 1939. But the Nazis were obsessed with the Jews from day one, from 1933. It's not something that only erupted because of the war. So this demands an explanation. So of course they burned other books, and actually my book begins with the burning of the books in 1933, when the Nazis burned books all over Germany, and I see it as this new modernity, anti-communist, anti-liberal, anti-Thomas Mann, anti-all these guys. But still, we have the question with which I started. Why to burn the Bible? The Bible is not yet just another book. It has historical implication. So actually, I think your question is very good, and it was one of the questions that I started with and then moved on.
Thomas? Okay. Allow me to, yeah.
You mentioned the Nazis as if a half a dozen individuals called Nazis decided to do what you described. You don't say anything about when genocide is perpetrated by a nation.
Yes.
What are the people doing? They're going along with these half a dozen Nazis.
I'm afraid you'll have to read my book. But it's a good question. So actually, I don't think that there were half a dozen Nazis, of course. There were a lot. And in my book, I show how the violence, burning 1,400 synagogues, that's a lot. Taking the Torah from the synagogues to the street and burning it there, it's more than just Nazis. So there is public participation. In the book, there are all these scenes. And still one may say, a minute, hold it. What do you want to say? That all Germans agreed to this imagination of a world without Jews and they all wanted to kill all the Jews? This is not true. We know it's not true. We know that there were Germans, quite a lot, who were shocked by the burning of the Torah. So how do we put this within your question and within the question that I... So my answer to this is, my book is not about whether people agreed or disagreed with the Nazis, but about the imaginary availability in a given society. Let me give you an example. Let's go back to 1860 America. There are people who are for slavery and they are abolitionists. Even if you are an abolitionist, you imagine slavery. You can imagine it. You can be an abolitionist only because you can imagine what slavery is, or you have an idea. Today, in our society, We cannot imagine having a human being as a property that can be bought and sold. So you have to imagine slavery in order to understand it and to be against it. My investigation was not about whether everybody believed, but it was on a deeper level, on a culture that creates a certain image with which you live. It's like the air you breathe. That's how you perceive the world. Now you decide whether to agree with it, to oppose it, to be indifferent to it. But it is part of your own. You made it your own. And to this investigation was very important for me, precisely because there has been this prevailing idea that the Holocaust was unimaginable and unrepresentable, and I never believed in it. What does it mean? So of course, people in Germany did not know, most people did not know about the gas chambers in Auschwitz. But my argument is they did not have to know about the gas chamber in Auschwitz in order to understand that when in November, December 1941, the remnants of local Jews is deported to the east from German towns, these people walk. It is a public spectacle. These people walk in the street. Everybody is looking. Not with violence. There is silence. It's the silence of, I believe, that's my interpretation, of Germans knowing the Jewish life on German soil has ended. These Jews are going with one suitcase in tow. What kind of a life are we going to start with one suitcase in tow in the resettlement in the East? After you as a German know that these Jews from 1933 to 1941 were persecuted, their synagogues burned, lost their work, lost their rights. See, this is the kind of the imagination. You don't need to know about Auschwitz in order to know the Jewish life in German territory in Europe has ended. This way or another. So this is the way, what you call the nation. I don't want to speak about the nation. I look at what happened in the streets, social scenes. It's this imagination that allows us to understand what sometimes we don't want to understand, actually. But I think it is much more powerful as a historical explanation than the dichotomy, I knew about the gas chambers or I didn't know about the gas chambers.
Let me ask the final question, and of course, if there are any other comments, other questions you might have, by all means, please come on up, talk to our speaker. He agreed kindly to be a little longer, and of course to answer. I think, and I would argue, to piggyback on this question, that of course the differentiation, right, that your sophisticated reading interpretation of the Holocaust in Germany provides, right, breaking down the various elements of the imagination of Nazis and Germans vis-a-vis the Jews is of course one of the strengths of that study. But it's also very striking to me looking at it and having read, of course, the entire account and also reviewed it for one of our journals, is in fact also one distinct notion that the book doesn't touch, for example, on the importance of gender dynamics, right? On the importance of how violence against Jews was also gendered, of how was Jewish was also imagined differently, also similarly, of course. It's not just the issue of gender difference, right? So I was wondering, now obviously, of course, the book can only do so much, but I mean, can we really write these histories also of memory and the like, gender blind, especially after decades of so important research by so many of our colleagues?
I think gender, and I would add a few other things that I didn't do in my work. You need a very detailed social history of who said what to him, to whom, with respect to the imagination of a world without Jews. Because we need to know much more about maybe about gender, about class, about geographical locations. Some areas in Germany were much more anti-Semitic than others. And this is an investigation that I could not take because I had this story that I wanted to tell. It already included quite a lot of things. No, really, I'm telling you. And I wanted to stay on message. And I wanted to write also a readable book with an expansive narrative, with a lot of everyday life scenes and the violence and illustrations. And I have to confess, I wanted to write a book of about 200, 250 pages, so hopefully people will read it, rather than writing a book of 600 pages that will occasionally be consulted. So I'm absolutely agreeing with this, and I take it as a compliment. I mean, I know that Thomas likes my book, but there are others who say this kind of criticism not in a nice way. I take it also as a compliment that my book raises more questions. We need students to have dissertation topics.
Okay, that's an excellent ending. So let's thank our speakers. Thank the audience for coming out. And let me briefly use this as a reminder that we have copies of several books of our speaker available for sale right up front. And then secondly, our third event of the center is coming up on November the 10th. We have a survivor of the Rwandan genocide in 1994 here speaking to us about his struggles and suffering. So it's going to be at 7 p.m., same location here, November 10th. Thank you again for coming, and see you soon. Bye-bye. Well, I mean, that's